I see I wore the right color.
The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Steven Cash with my co-host Tulio Saragusa, and we've got a special guest we'll introduce in a moment. So empathy is often misunderstood in business, especially in industries where performance and precision and results are critical. Yet 93% of employees say they are more likely to stay with an empathetic employer. And in environments like healthcare and patient services, empathy is not just a leadership trait. It directly impacts trust, decision-making, and outcomes. We're going to talk about that all today. Tulio, introduce our special guest.
My pleasure. Our guest today is Greg Essenmacher, the CEO of GnA Consult. Greg is a leading expert in fixed full arch dentistry with more than a decade of experience helping dental practices transform into high-performing organizations. He has worked extensively on optimizing patient acquisition, improving case acceptance, and enhancing patient experience through better communication and systems. His journey in the full arch space includes launching the Neodent brand into the U.S. market for Straumann Group, and implementing best practices for some of the most successful clinics in the country. Greg is also a sought-after speaker and the host of the Tooth Sleuth Podcast, where he shares insights on leadership, patient experience, and growth in dentistry. Greg, welcome to the Bliss Business Podcast. We're looking forward to speaking with you today.
Thanks so much. I just want to see if you can say the Tooth Sleuth Podcast 3 times really fast, because it's a tongue twister. So I want you both to repeat that really fast for the listening audience.
I was thinking that in my head as Tulio said that.
I can say red leather, yellow leather really fast. Practicing for decades.
As soon as Tulio said that, I'm all.
The Tooth Sleuth Podcast.
Tooth Sleuth.
The Tooth Sleuth Podcast.
The Tooth Sleuth Podcast. Who wants the Tooth Sleuth?
I feel like I might spit on the mic or something doing that.
Yeah. That's why
about it. It's a tooth.
It's safer. Yeah.
So we're going to have a good time with this show, I can already tell. But Greg, I'm really interested in, this topic of empathy, particularly kind of in your space and how important it is, why it matters. Maybe let's start there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the question. And not only is it important for clients that we work with that are in the fixed full arch space, teeth in a day, all on X, whatever you want to call it, because we're coaching those that are converting cases, converting lead calls into consultations that actually show up and ready to have the conversation. Because most of those patients have a lot of shame built in. This isn't something that happened overnight. They have poor oral health, and they're really in need of a rescue for their dental condition. And so having empathy from that initial phone call is so critically important to make them feel like it's going to be okay. We are a solution for you. But in addition to that, it's also empathy with our team members and with those that we get in contact with, prospects that call us, because so many of the marketing companies out there are in it for themselves. They talk about all these grandiose things they can do for clients. And they come to us because so many of those promises are unfulfilled. So I think it's critically important because I know I use it in talking all the time, the 7 steps to empathic listening, which empathy is kind of like communication. Everybody thinks it's happening when most of the time it isn't. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Yeah, it's so important. We know from like our marketing side of things that having that authentic, empathetic experience for customers, if we don't have that, then whatever we're saying marketing wise, like you alluded to, it just can fall flat. Tell me a little bit, how did you get into this industry to start with?
Yeah, well, I backed into the industry. So I actually was in rental car. So I've been sober for 21 years. And before that, I was just kind of like flopping around doing nothing important in my life, but, being a bartender and whatnot. And then I got into rental car when I first got sober and did that for 3 years, was working for a company that actually sold And so then was looking around in medical device and thought, oh, I'll be a medical device rep, or, and was looking at those companies and saw this ad on monster.com. Yes, I'm that old, monster.com, for a dental company, and went for the interview and landed the job and really got into the space when it came to bone grafting material and dental implants. And then 12 years ago, locked in with Neodent, and we really focused on the fixed full arch space. But that's not really my story and why full arch has been such a gravitational pull for me. It's really more personal than that, and why I've stayed in it, started my consulting business 4.5 years ago. So my mother grew up on a farm in the thumb of Michigan, and all of her siblings, when they were growing up, they didn't brush their teeth. And so all of them, all 7 of them, by the time that they were 18, 20 years old, had all of their teeth removed because they were rough. Had just those floppy dentures. Now, my mom passed when I was very young, so she didn't get the benefits of what I see patients' transformation every single day by fixating those dentures and being able to bite into an apple or eat a steak, or be able to smile with confidence. And so it really is a personal journey for these 36, 38 million Americans that are edentulous, that don't have any teeth. So it's not just about building a business and making tons of money, or helping practices to do that, but it also is a personal journey of mine as well.
Yeah, wow. That's, I mean, it's quite a story. I mean, I have that in your background too, because you definitely can see how that impacts people and their personalities and everything.
And it's such a personal thing. And you're right. I unfortunately inherited my teeth from my mom and her mom, which not a good inheritance. We've talked about all kinds of issues. This year it's been the fixed Tulio teeth a year, but there's a lot of shame that comes with like having problems, even if you take care of it. Some are hereditarily just weak teeth. So, and with that comes the challenge of like a case being accepted or what have you. And you work with a lot of different practices on improving like case acceptance and even patient communication. How does like empathy influence the way patients make decisions? And how do you influence those practices to help those patients make decisions?
Well, I can appreciate that. And I just want to touch on the fact that a lot of the dental condition is hereditary. There are plenty of people that I know that I've never had a cavity in my life. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Like, I mean, I have been riddled with it my entire life. And now, as an adult, since I got into dental, it's brushing and flossing and all of the things to try to keep my dentition as best as possible. But, and I won't get into the clinical side of things of, your enamel and all of the things, right? But clinically, it is very genetic. And so the shame-based part of it, when folks do have failing dentition, and then the pieces that they've gone through historically of having a bridge or having, a missing tooth, or that's okay, it's a back tooth, I don't really need that one. And then collapsing teeth into the space and just the cascading and domino effect. And eventually it just gets so bad that, Jenny, okay, it's really time that we take care of this and address it, right? Or you have the other situation, which I just want to rip the Band-Aid off here as well, because, I shared with you that I made some different decisions up until the age of 33. There are people that, made decisions and we'll just call them poor decisions, right? Addiction is a disease as well. And then they get clean and sober, and they do for a few years. And then they reach that ceiling or that peak in their career because they do have a bombed out mouth, or they really have terrible oral health condition. Well, if you're looking at dental work and it's not inexpensive, but they can't get that next promotion, especially if they're in any customer-facing industry whatsoever. Now, we're sitting behind a podcast, and yeah, you can still kind of see our teeth, but there's so many customer-facing industry pieces that it blocks you. And even if you are not in front of a camera and not in front of customers on a daily basis, but if you're in a management position, you're still interacting with other human beings on a daily basis. It will affect the way that you have the ability to advance in your career, because it's perception and all of that. When the courage gets up to actually be able to reach out for help in this area, that first phone call, the person receiving that first phone call, if it is a transactional type of nature, of great, yeah, we can get you in for a complimentary consultation and we can see you Tuesday or Thursday. the lack of empathy in that first communication reinforces all that shame-based fear that the individual calling, that patient calling. And so it's so critically important that there's a framework involved that we teach. And I have a trademark sales process, and it's the EAZ method. The E is empathy. Having empathy for these patients and how to express empathy. It can't come from a script, because if it comes from a script, you're going to sound like a 55-year-old white male from Detroit, right? And I'll be 55 tomorrow. That doesn't work in any part of the country. And it's so critically important that sounds like your practice. It sounds like who you are as an individual, so you can make that emotional connection with the patient. So they feel comfortable coming and seeing a complete stranger, opening up their mouth and exposing one of the most vulnerable parts of who they are. That's where the empathy journey starts before they even walk in the door. So that first piece, which is on that lead call, that first conversation, because most of them will hide behind a keyboard, right? So that empathy coming through text message, difficult to express, but when you finally have that first conversation, and there's strategies behind this. This isn't just something where you're like, oh, say this magic word. I referenced before that we teach the 7 steps to empathic listening, right? A few simple ones. Giving someone your undivided attention. In a dental practice, if all of you who are watching, think for a moment, think of a dental practice. What do you think of? Busy, chaotic, lots of people. You have no idea who half the people are and where they're walking to, right? So if you think about that, getting someone's undivided attention, especially on the phone during that initial conversation, is critically important. And that's just one of those 7 steps to empathic listening that is critically important to express that empathy.
So what impact does that have on patients, like beyond the metrics, beyond the business metrics? I'm curious if you've got some stories around that, and then more, and also how do you coach those teams to be more effective with patients?
Yeah, we see it all the time, because there are very large organizations called DSOs, dental service organizations, in the dental space, and we work with some of them. So I don't want to cut them all with the same knife, if you will. But generally, with clients that we work with, we hear patient stories all the time, because recording of calls is a big thing, so that we can work with our clients on this as well, and being able to help them and guide them. Saying simple things like, "I'm nervous to come in." We hear that from a patient. The response mechanism should not be, "Well, great. Well, we'll do a complimentary consultation. Are you able to come in Tuesday at 2:00? Right? Because the E, and I referenced the EAZ, it's acknowledging what the patient has just said. I understand many of our patients are nervous about coming in and seeing, but the great thing, Dr. So-and-so has seen so many patients just like you. And let me tell you what it's going to be like when you come into our practice. It's calming their fear. And to talk about outcome of what difference does it make, that person can then anticipate seeing whoever's on that other end of the phone call. So making that connection with that human being, so they know they're going to come in and see a human being, right? Oh, I'm going to come in and see you, Jenny. Great. So now I have a human being that I know I've connected with. So when they get ready to have the courage to walk in the door, I know you said besides the metrics are the show rate, right? So that they actually come in and show up. But then they're also coming in to see a human being, and they're more relaxed. Sure, they're going to be anxious, they're going to be nervous in general, but at least they're coming in to see a human being, not to see a practice, not to see an organization. And we see that more with the individual practices, is that human connection helps to reduce their fear and anxiety. It does come out in metrics and numbers like blood pressure, and the ability to be calm when they come in, and they're actually open to more conversation and hear what it is that they're going to learn about, which is, what are the options available? Certainly all the metrics come into play, like the conversion rates and the patient acceptance and all that, but just that human capacity and emotion. And then the ultimate, which is on the other side of it, is after they accept treatment, after they go through this process, that what we call the patient reveal, which is after the treatment's been done, to see that patient, just the waterworks. It's what really locked me in addition to the story about my mother and how it really made a difference. The very first time that I was a part of one of these transformative surgeries, and the final prosthesis, the final denture was delivered, and I was in the operatory, and the patient had not seen their new smile yet. and they gave the patient a mirror and sat on their lap and said, okay, don't look yet. Okay, now. And they lifted the mirror up onto their lap, and just tears started streaming down their face, because they hadn't seen like a smile on their face the way that they looked in 20 years. And it was, for me, just being in the room, an emotional experience. And to see that over and over, because I've been in over 1,000 surgeries, to be able to see it now, it doesn't happen every time, right? So don't get me wrong. It's not like every time, oh, angels come down, they sit at the foot of the operatory and, sparkles everywhere. But seeing that is a part of that whole journey. Expressing the empathy opens up the conversation to be able to have this amazing outcome.
I love it.
That's amazing. As I'm listening, I keep thinking of Dr. Scubin, my dentist in Costa Mesa, California. Love you, Dr. Scubin.
So, Greg, what I want to kind of dive in here a little bit is kind of on the system side of things, because we're always talking about, with Bliss, we're talking about building love into scalable systems. So we're talking about, scaling that kindness in some way. And so you're knee deep, waist deep into systems, I think, trying to push that, that empathetic approach to it. Can we talk about like what kind of systems or processes help ensure that, that empathy is a consistent part of that patient experience? We kind of talked about it a little bit with the acronym, but let's go a little deeper here.
It is. And for me, it's just like as if it were any sport, right? It's a wash, rinse, repeat. One of the most important things for us, we can certainly, we like to say, show me, tell me, let me, in order to get the most effective results with clients that we work with. And this is through the training that we do, the coaching that we do. And how we do this is we give them the framework on how to actually do, right? Show me. We show them by actually doing for them with patients. We show them through doing phone calls, whether it's phone calls or whether it's the treatment coordinators in practice. The tell me then is actually giving them the outline and the framework and the tools that they need. And then let me is having them actually do it and then giving them feedback. One of the most important pieces that we do at GnA Consulting is that having them listen to, right? So I use the term audit. My coaches always like rebuff and they're like, stop calling them audits. Well, they're audits, right? Everybody knows what an audit is. Nobody wants an audit. Nobody likes that term, but it's my company, darn it. So I'm going to call
it and we're doing an empathy audit here. So
that's right. That's right. It's an empathy audit. I like that. I'm going to use that. My team's going to be like, where'd you get that from? Be like, that's not my fault. It's from the folks at the Bliss podcast. Their fault. Blame someone. Wait, no blame and shame. We just talked about that. Stop getting me in more troubles. I get enough trouble myself. I don't need any help.
Blame me. Go ahead. Blame me. I'll take it.
Yeah. But it's the audits, and it's actually a scorecard based, especially on the phone calls, on 9 different parameters. And it's just a scoring basis on 1 to 5. And we actually listen to the calls, we score the calls, and then the team member, their coach that's assigned to them, does a loom over the actual call. Sends it back on a weekly basis. So because they actually get to listen to themselves, because it's so difficult to say to somebody, okay, well, we taught you to do it this way, but you're doing it this way. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Listen. And then during the weekly calls of playing little snippets of pieces of what good looks like and what not so good looks like. Because it's just like, I'm sure the two of you, when you first started doing podcasting or any type of public speaking and you heard it back, I'm sure you thought like I did, right? Because, with my own podcast, like the first 10 times or so, be like, oh, I sound like that. Or anyone listening or watching, well, this is going to age me as well. You recorded your own voicemail, right? So we do it on our phones now. If you do it custom, nobody likes to do the custom anymore, but go ahead and record your voice, right? And then listen back to it. If you haven't done it in a while, do it. It's very telling. It's the same with the consultations that we teach our treatment coordinators or our doctors, because I'll ask when I do speaking all over the country, I'll literally ask the question to the audience, raise your hand if you've recorded yourself giving a treatment plan that's more than $10,000. Raise your hand. Inevitably, if I get more than 10% of the hands raised in the room, it's shocking.
Yeah.
It's just like your statistic about 93% not really like having empathy in the workplace, right? And it coming forward as something that is actually being actuated by most companies. It's so shocking that people are not willing to look at themselves and try to improve on it. I always like to say everybody's got to tell. It's like poker, right? That's why I don't go to Vegas and sit down at the poker tables with 7 other people, because I'm all tell. Like, you can read me like a book. I'm an open book, right? I might as well just sit down, push the chips in the middle of the table, stand up and say, there you go, because I'm all tell. But for individuals to be able to sit down when they say a number, especially if it's a big number, or however they're presenting the treatment plan, something shifts in their face, something will shift in their body. And if they don't know what it is, because it is a confidence game, right? To go back to, we were saying in the green room, we were laughing and doing like mafioso stuff, right? It's a confidence game. And it's believability, because there's 2 things that are critically important, especially in full arch and dentistry, in sales in general, in big ticket sales, right? It's confidence, it's belief, and knowledge. Right? You have to be knowledgeable in what you're doing, right? They have to believe that you can actually help them to get to where you're going to. And you have to be believable. If you're not believable, they're not going to say yes. And so being able to marry those 2 things and then present it in a way, but that's where we get into that. We want those that we coach to believe what we're saying. And if we don't have those recordings and we don't go according to a scorecard, that way the great thing is it's really not even us telling them subjectively, no, you're doing poor in this area, but good in this area. It's actually fairly objective, even though, most would think, oh, well, you're talking about empathy. That's very subjective. No, it's really not, because other observers would believe the same way. It just depends if you're a tough grader or not about where the scale would be. But at least relative to their growth structure, it's very obvious.
And for it to be believable, you have to make it kind of authentic, right, to them, to kind of understand, really what that person's going through, kind of feel that pain and understand like the bigger why, I think, of what you're doing as far as this whole process.
Well, it does, and it's relative, right? So we all know people that their empathy scale. Okay, we all know people that, for example, I ask people this all the time. In your company, if you were to walk in and tell them, oh, my dog is really sick and I think he's got to go to the vet, the person who would come up and put their arm around you and comfort you, empathy scale, very high in empathy. And you also know somebody who'd be like, oh, sorry to hear that. They wouldn't put their arm around you. They're not going to hug you. Their empathy is not really high. However, even though they all start at a different baseline of empathy, they can still express empathy in their own way. I don't want to make a bunch of tree-hugging individuals out of the people that we coach, but wherever they start to be able to express empathy, that's okay. But it also means that when we start working with clients, there may be some individuals in roles in their practices and in their groups that might not be in the best seat, right? We all know EOS, right? Right person, right seat, because it's so critically important. There's effective ways to do different roles in a practice. They all don't have to do it exactly the same way. However, when it comes to big cases in full arch, that an empathetic ear and empathetic tone, especially on that lead call, is critically important in order to get the most effective results. And yet we've got all the metrics to be able to prove it out with hundreds of clients all over the country. It is proven that somebody who expresses empathy in all that they do throughout the entire transaction and interaction, right? Not transaction, but interaction. My coaches, again, they're going to hear this. Boy, am I in trouble, right? Throughout the entire interaction, that it's a much higher conversion rate into consultations and a much higher show rate for those consultations. And ultimately, which is really what our clients are looking for, it's a much higher return on that ad spend of investment, because it's a higher close rate. It's a higher conversion into consultations that actually convert into patients that say yes to treatment and case acceptance from that lead call. And that's really the piece. Now, when it comes to clients that we work with on case acceptance and the treatment coordinators, there's a lot of different ways that you can skin a cat, right? There's some that go in like the doctors and treatment coordinators that are basically like, we're the absolute best. If you go anywhere else, you're an idiot. I don't know why you ever would. So you're going to get it done here. Now, if you have that bravissimo and you can pull it off every single day, for some it works. But they're being authentic to their true self. There's others that don't try it because that's not who you are. Being
Mhm.
true to yourself is critically important. And for others, it's more about, this is what I'm seeing. This is the best option for what you shared your goals were. And let us try to find the way forward financially for you, with you. And that's what's critically important, is then that authenticity, which is so critically important. In most practices, it's that empathy piece that's really going to make the difference, of being true to them and identifying what the patient's needs are and matching the goals to what that looks like.
All right, we've got an audience question too. Let's pull that up. So this is from a LinkedIn user. How do you help teams stay connected to purpose during growth or pressure?
Oh, that's a really good question. I have to answer that?
I know. I was thinking, well, this transitions, I guess. We're going to be talking about purpose here a little bit. So audience is telling us to get on with it.
I love that. How do you help teams to like stick to their purpose? Because I think ultimately, if there's alignment on what their purpose is, right, it stands up under all circumstances. Because if it's under pressure, right, thriving times and scaling times and growing times, it's okay. So what's our purpose? Well, obviously our purpose is working because we're scaling and growing. And then it's a matter of, and I wonder if the pressure and scaling is the same, or if we're talking about two different lanes, because you could be talking about two different lanes. A lot of our clients do scale quickly, and it puts a lot of pressure on the system, right? Yeah. And so then the temptation, I'll just be very honest, right? You guys asked me to be honest, so I'm going to be honest. The temptation then is to cut corners, right? Or it's to fall back into what's familiar, not necessarily what's comfortable, but what's familiar. And we see this all the time with clients. It is way too common. And that is, we start coaching and training the teams. We start to see the uplift. They start to adopt like our EAZ method, right? A lot of empathy and whatnot, especially in the lead call. Even if they're like ready to book right away, right? They want to book right away. We make sure that we still circle back and express the empathy, make the connection, even after they've given the buying signals, if you will, right? And then the success starts to happen. The time crunch starts to happen. The more limited availability happens. And then it's a matter of, great, they're ready to book, off the call they go. But what's challenging is on the back end, the no-show rates start to increase and all the challenges start to happen on the back end. The conversion rate, right? And again, my coaches are like probably screaming, no, don't say conversion, right? But the revenue, right, per patient that actually comes in starts to decrease, because that empathy and that emotional connection on the front end during that first call isn't established nearly as much as it was in the beginning. So keeping teams aligned on that, it goes back to what I was just sharing before. It's the scorecards, it's listening to the call audits, it's doing the Loom videos, it's going back to, it's wash, rinse, repeat, back to the basics, and identifying like what is moving forward, what isn't moving forward, and going back to listening to the calls. Because the work that we do is 360, whether we're doing all parts of it, right? The marketing, the lead call, and the closing, right? For the treatment coordinators, or whether we're just doing parts of, because we do a la carte as well. So it doesn't matter whether we're doing all or some, it's all related, and we still hold all the pieces accountable according to the metrics, right? And empathy is such a huge part of it, because it's something that you feel, but it's something you can still measure. And in all of our scorecards, empathy is the very first one, the very first measurable in all of our scorecards. And it's critically important. The other thing that I want to touch on here, and I haven't yet, and I've been very remiss because I haven't spoken on this yet. All of our clients start with leadership coaching, because if the leadership is not on board from the very beginning and they're looking for the magic wand or the pixie dust for us to come in and save them, rescue them. And it goes right to your question. I love the question, which is that piece of like, how do you maintain like, your eye on the prize with purpose when there's stress and pressure or scaling's going on? If there isn't initial buy-in with leadership of, we're going to adopt this and we're going to hold not just the team, but ourselves accountable to being able to do things in a better way, right? Which is sustainable, right? Not the quick fix where you get the spikes, right? Because that sometimes happens too. So critically important that the leadership adoption is in place so that all team members are on board. And it's okay if some aren't, because that happens in a small percentage of our clients too. A good friend of mine, Chelsea Myers, and we're doing a learning series on this, that there are some team members, and she equates it to, that are just like in a deep sleep, that you don't wake them up, right? They really don't want to get on board with learning and scaling and growing and adopting a new way, which is, the empathic way of really being able to do better, and being able to have a better patient experience. We've always done it this way. Why would we need to? We've worked with other coaches. We've worked with other consultants. That's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just means that maybe you're not a good fit. So it goes back to that leadership coaching and leadership adoption of this change, right, to patient experience, incorporating empathy into everything that we do, which ultimately is going to help us to maintain like our eye on the prize and really stay true to our purpose. So I love that question, and thank you, because it helped to spark the leadership coaching piece, which I had failed to mention earlier. So whoever named that question, like, you get a prize, you get a door prize, like you do at the dentist's office, right? So with the kids, you get one out of the box, out of the toy box, one for you.
Yeah, no, it's so important. I mean, if you don't have that buy-in, everything's just going to fall flat if you don't have leadership buying in on it.
So we can see the connection. You made the connection between how empathy ties into purpose, being purposeful. And I'm just curious, what happens when the pressure kicks in or during higher growth periods? How do you help those teams stay connected?
Like, as far as if they fall back on the old habits, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
When things are under pressure, you easily go back to your old ways. You forget all that you've learned sometimes, and
especially in the leadership. Well, especially in that leadership position, I think that's where it's like, hey, I'm going to fall back on these habits, because this is how I've been doing things all my life, right? If I'm in my 40s or 50s or something, right? How do you keep them aligned?
Yeah, I love the question, because there really are different layers to it, right? When it comes to, the soldiers on the ground, right? The implementers, the player on the field, the ones that are most impactful to the patient experience, right? The pieces that we've talked about, from the lead call to the treatment coordinators, even the front desk to the dental assistants, because we do incorporate all parts of the dental team, especially when it comes to full arch, as they're scaling. When they get beyond just, an arch or two a month type of thing, right? So when they really start scaling beyond that, the 3 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20 arches a month, in a general dentistry practice for the most part, right? Because they still have a thriving general dentistry part of their practice. When those pieces start to fall, because we have clients that have been with us for years, right? So this is very common. We see this cycle, right? And as it becomes cyclical, we just want to continue to see growth overall in that graph, because where focus goes, attention grows. And so we know that it's not going to be like everybody has a tremendous amount of excitement. Every single training session isn't going to be incredible engagement. Life happens, people happen. Kids are on spring break, and so like the parents are like totally distracted because Jimmy and Bobby just like pulled each other hairs out, and somebody's in the emergency room because a tooth got knocked. Well, if a tooth got knocked out, you bring them to the dentist's office. But somebody broke their arm and they're getting a cast put on, right? So there is distraction. It's never going to be the same level of engagement, but it's really about consistency on our side of what the deliverables are, and then consistently being able to adjust and adapt, because what we provide is a framework that's consistent and helping them to build and grow within that. And on top of it's like Lincoln logs, right? Or building blocks that you're consistently building on top, because being able to adapt to the patient and to the marketplace. For those of you who have been around for more than a day, that 3 years ago, money was flowing free, right? Credit scores were better. Debt to income ratios were better, right? And if you wanted to get a loan for $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, it was a lot easier. Interest rates were lower, right? APRs were lower, and it was much easier to get that money. Now, it's much more challenging. But if a treatment coordinator is living where they were 12 months ago or 24 months ago and using the excuse of, oh, patients just don't have any money. Well, no, but your job just got a little more challenging. So how are you helping, or how are you adapting as a practice? And so it's constantly shifting and adjusting. So yes, it can get challenging on our part, but I find that part of the fun. But for individual locations and owners, it's really being able to adapt and find new tools that are available to you, and being able to really take that look and say, well, what is it? How are we slipping? And there's always this lag period of the reporting, because the reporting's there, and the lag tool is the P&L statement. The lag tool is you go to pay, you go to pay payroll as an owner, and suddenly now you're like, well, wait a second, like there was more money in this account last month than there is this month, and now it's dragging behind. So these scorecards and what we provide on the front end is kind of like the warning signal on the front end, and then it's okay, well, they've seen it. Because if we don't also present the information in a new way, right? Because they have access to it, or alert them to it. And that's why also not only the leadership coaching, but the strategy meetings that we hold, to be able to ask them what's most important to you right now. Because sometimes growing their arch business, growing the number of arches per month might not be the most important thing. Mm-hmm. It might be growing aspects of their business that are related to full arch, which could be they want to be more efficient with the number of arches they're doing within certain time frames. They might want to be looking at how can we reduce costs, or how can we do more of a particular, maybe it's not fix full arch, maybe it's overdenture, or capture more patient revenue, or reactivate patients, or create a membership plan, or all of these other aspects and tools that are related to fix full arch. It's not just how can I do more arch business? How can I close more cases? How can I get better return on my ad spend?
And all these skills they're all going to apply to all of that. I mean, it's not just, one particular area of that. So Greg, one question I love to ask on this show, and I'm going to change it slightly for this. What role should love play in running a dental business?
Oh, that's a good question. The first thing that comes to mind, the first thing that comes to mind is loving on patients, right? Doesn't cost anything to love your patients. And you can see that in the practices that do, but also loving on your staff. We've seen so much. It's so common to hear about staffing shortages, to hear about hygienists get paid too much, right? They're asking for too much. It's ridiculous, fill in the blank, right? And all of the challenges with the side of running a business. If we were just lean more into loving on each other a little bit more in the dental practice, and a little bit less on what the P&L statement does, the fidelity would be there even greater. The little things that I see that trickle down of an owner loving on their team members. I can give you a great example. I was with one of our clients, it was about 6 months ago. I was on site visiting with them. By 10 a.m., I mean, you could see that there was something going on, and I didn't quite know what it was because I wasn't clued into it. It was a client that we had just onboarded fairly recently. And it's the little things. There was this sterile wrapper that was on the ground and kind of in the corner-ish of a hallway. They have a couple of hallways. And I noticed it. Now, I'm one of those that goes and picks things up. I chose not to because I wanted to see how many employees would walk by that sterile wrapper and not pick it up on that particular day. 7 different employees walked by it. Now, when we talk about love in a dental practice, if an owner loves on his team and the team loves that owner back, they're going to love the way that practice looks, and they're going to want that practice to look as if they would their own home. Most people have a very clean home. By them continually walking by it, and I know full well there's no way that at least 5 out of those 7 walked by that and didn't see it. But choosing not to take the extra action of simply bending down and picking it up and throwing it in the garbage, either that or none of them saw it because they were just too out of sorts to see it. That's where love comes in. Love your employees loving you and loving your patients, right? No amount of marketing or how many new patients am I getting in? What is my conversion ratio? What is my new patient revenue per new patient? None of those metrics can be measured by the amount of love, but that single sterile wrapper in the hallway told me everything I needed to know about that practice on that day. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that this practice every single day, but that's, for me, a very tangible piece of how much love was being felt by the employees for the practice, whether it's the owner or other, on that particular day.
Yeah, I love that story. I mean, it's so critical to have that. If you want this empathetic culture in your business, it's really got to permeate between all of you that are there. Otherwise, someone's coming in, they're going to see that, those little things like that just don't ring true with a loving, empathetic, caring environment.
Well, I didn't want to go the bathroom story, because if you ever want to know exactly, I mean, if you think about it, use the restroom in anywhere you go. I mean, I'll just say this, like Starbucks is a great example. Like Starbucks historically had horrible bathrooms until the new CEO came in. I think it was about a year ago, and he was determined to do two things. And one of them was to make sure that Starbucks had clean bathrooms. And within a couple of months, all the Starbucks now have clean bathrooms. Anywhere you go. For someone like myself that's on the road a lot and visiting clients a lot and out on the road, you learn who has clean bathrooms and who doesn't have clean bathrooms. Up until a year ago, Starbucks did not have clean bathrooms. Now Starbucks has clean bathrooms. Just saying.
Nice.
Check out the bathroom of your dental practice. If you're going into a new dental practice, a new medical facility, anywhere you want sterile, clean, check out the restroom.
Check out the bathroom.
Check out the bathroom, man.
For those who want to learn more about you and your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, easiest way, if you can spell my name, find me on socials, or you can look up my company. So it's GnA Consulting. That's the easiest way.
And with that, can they find out the rest of the acronym EAZE? Is that it?
Oh, yeah. I didn't tell you the Z, did I? I was holding out on you. Yeah. So it's empathy. Assurance is the A, and the little A's are acknowledge what they say, answer their question, ask another question. The Z is zeal. Zeal is, I have a lot of zeal when I talk. So that just means it's an old time word. I love it. It's zeal. Yeah. It's just little energy.
I had to make sure we got that in. Otherwise, I'll probably hear it from
people are like chomping at the bit, I'm sure.
Greg, thanks for joining us and sharing your thoughts on empathy and leadership. And to our listeners, I think there's a lot you can pull from this. It's about how we communicate, how we lead, how we create these experiences, like we just talked about, that build that trust and that care in your business. So consider how empathy shapes those outcomes that you create. And thank you for joining us and your questions. And thank you again for tuning in. And we'll see you next time on the Bliss Business Podcast.